my feelings were just, well, look, I mean, I think the only thing that makes logistical sense is taking a knee. And to me, it's not a disrespectful gesture. People take a knee to pray, propose to their future spouse, and when a player on the field is hurt, the other players take a knee out of respect until he's, either walks off, carted off, carried off the field.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Change Agents, an Ironclad original presented by Firecracker Farm. Today, we're going to be talking about the division in the United States of America. My guest to do so is Nate Boyer. Nate is a former Green Beret who served in multiple tours in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and then decided to leave military service and go to the University of Texas, where he walked on to the football team, having never played organized football before, where he would become a first-team academic All-Big 12 conference member playing long snapper. He went undrafted into the NFL, but signed with the Seattle Seahawks, where he played during the 2015 preseason. He is the co-founder of the organization Merging Vets and Players, also known as MVP, which helps veterans and athletes transition beyond their uniform. He's also a filmmaker and entrepreneur, and the co-founder of the premium meat company, 8 Primal. Let's get into the show. This is an interesting one, man. It's so many things I want to talk to you about. Obviously, your time in the Army as a Green Beret. What led you there? Learning to play football, or the position you played on YouTube, which is like the way my kids learn how to do everything. It's fascinating to me.
Right. It's funny.
But then, what I actually think is the most germane to what's going on in our country. I'm curious your thoughts on this. I will be the first to admit that I didn't deeply pay attention to politics until more recently in my life. When I was in the military, I was paying attention to military stuff, as I think most people were.
Same.
Yeah, and in hindsight, actually, even at that time, I wish I had a little bit more of a global optic. I don't know if I was mature enough to really do that. But you were kind of directly involved. What I will say is a situation that I think got a little bit out of hand. I think it got misconstrued. But it was largely messaging about divisiveness over a particular topic. And I look at the world around us right now. Well, not even the world. I'll just talk about the U.S. inside of our own borders.
Right.
I don't know if I've ever seen it in my life where it is this insane. You are either 100% in an ideological bucket or you're an enemy. God forbid you try to navigate the middle of the road and maybe have thoughts that are a little bit left and right. The name calling, the magic words, if you say anything, you're a fascist or you're a MAGA. And all of these things have just been weaponized. And I don't actually think a single one of them is productive. So as somebody who I think found themselves probably not intentionally in the nucleus of something that was considered to be very divisive, I'm just curious. Let's just start with, what's your thoughts on the old U.S. today as we slide into Thanksgiving?
We slide into the radical middle is somebody said that to me once, man. I heard him say that and I'm like, that's exactly right. I mean, I
love it. I already love it.
Of all the, in my opinion, that the people on the fringes are so much more similar than everybody else. Yes, they believe, or at least say they believe, very different things, but at the end of the day, it all kind of comes back to control. It feels like, you know what I mean? Trying to control you, trying to control what's said and done, and what's free speech, and all that, which is the opposite of what this country stands for. Freedom, ultimately, I believe, and it's just kind of funny. But they never want to admit that. Of course, I get it, but the minute you bring that up, it's like you just deeply offended them. And I'm like, I'm just saying, it sounds kind of similar to this person that believes the exact opposite in all these ways, but they act in a very similar manner as you, just FYI, from my experience, so I don't know exactly how we got there. I think it's smartphones, honestly. I think it's just having constant information, whether it's true or not, at your fingertips and sort of spewed at you. I think that has led to it more than anything, but I'm sure it's a host of things when you really look at it. And yeah, I mean, but I'm also hopeful. I saw this the other day, which I thought was an interesting take. It was somebody that said, we're getting to this point where it's really hard to tell every day more and more what's real and what's AI, for example, when we're looking at videos on social
Yeah.
media. You know, we'll just keep it there. It's harder and harder to tell what's real and what's not. So we're going to get to a point soon where we're just going to assume everything's fake. You know, like we'll have no idea because you could pretty much just manipulate everything. And at that point, we're no longer going to feel as in touch with reality, or that these devices are keeping us in touch with reality. So maybe we'll put them down a little bit and step back away and try and like recalibrate and figure out like how are we going to move forward, because this is not only unhealthy, but it's just not like people crave. I think human beings crave, you know, uh, genuine communication, genuine touch. I don't mean physical touch necessarily, but just like we need that, you know, with one another. Where we are pack animals, and if we're gonna get into this place where everything potentially is not real, that disconnection is going to, I think, really affect people. I'll take an example. I'll take the example of just film and TV, right? I think there's a big pushback right now in the film industry. I work a bit in that space against anything AI, right? And I understand there are times.
You mean using AI to create anything in that
Yeah,
space?
yeah, exactly. Whether that's stories, whether that's characters that you literally see
Yeah.
on screen, whatever that is.
Extras is one I've heard.
Yeah.
They're worried about,
And
yeah.
it totally makes sense. And at some level, we've been doing it for years with CGI, you know.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of people, I'm one of those people, that it takes me out of it, whatever I'm watching. I don't care how big the budget is and how good it looks. I know it's not real. I know it's fake, and that takes me out of the moment. I'm less invested in what I'm watching as soon as I see that stuff. And of course, some things there's just no way of executing it in that way. Like we've developed through the 80s, 90s. Today, movies are very different than they were prior to that, where there was no access to um, you know visual effects in that manner.
Yeah.
So I guess the point was that there's this big pushback right now. I think partly because people are like, well, I don't want to just give all my jobs away to AI. But I think another part of that is from an audience perspective of just like, I really want to, I want to watch human beings going through real things, and overcoming real obstacles. And even though it's still a film, but that's why we love watching Tom Cruise, because he does his own stunts. Like that's such a real, like, wow, that's amazing. That's a human connection thing. Beyond the just, of course, stuntman, they do some incredible stuff as well. But like the fact that this person is doing all of these things, almost all of these things on his own, like that is a huge draw. And that's why his movies make $1 billion. People flock to the theaters when he has something come out like that. So anyway, long-winded answer of just like, I think that stuff is really contributing to this division, this from the phones to things not being real anymore. And like this division amongst our people politically, but also just connection wise. Like we're just not really connecting in the same way. I think it's affecting children. I think it's affecting adults. I mean, it's affecting everybody. Yeah. And there's, of course, life is easier in some ways because of it. Like we are, I mean, the point of all these things are to make life, easier, to improve our quality of life and make us more efficient. I get that, but at what cost, as they say.
What do you think the tipping point would be where people rebel against the devices? Because I saw a video of a miniature dachshund flying an F-18 yesterday based off of Top Gun, and I'm not going to lie, I'm here for it.
Right.
It was, you know what I mean? So obviously that's not going to fool me into thinking that actually happened, because obviously they could never see over the dash nor grab a hold of the joystick. But what do you think it would take for people to rebel against that onslaught? Because there's another aspect of this too. There are, and I bet the US does this as well, other nation states that are using this volume of information just to mess with our society, pitting people against each other.
Totally.
It's weaponized. It's a new, and I don't know what it would take to get people to finally just put it down, because I do agree with you. I think it may not be causal, but it's definitely corollary that the explosion of screen time and our interconnectedness and knowing about every tragedy the instant that it happens, and then not being able to escape it because it's everywhere being promoted. I just don't think the human brain is evolving as quickly as the devices that come out every year.
I mean, that's fair. I don't think we
Yeah.
are either. Like those are definitely
Yeah.
evolving at a faster rate, and they're, they think faster. They may not think as deep, but they think faster. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
adjust quicker. I don't know what that tipping point is. It feels like it's close. I don't know though. I mean, I don't know what close is. That's also a relative answer.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I, I don't know, but I mean, to your point, like the way information really is spread now, and how you can see every tragedy, for example, like you said,
Yeah.
like when something, and the news has done this for decades, way before the smartphones and that readily available information. It was like once something happened and it was a big deal, let's talk about every other situation similar to this that's in the news and make it a big deal. We'll make it a big deal. We'll make it a headline now. Like for instance, weather. We'll just go with something simple. We have a weather incident, whether that's a fire or a hurricane or whatever it is. And it's like for the next several months, if it was a big one, every almost potential fire, hurricane that's going to destroy something, it's like headline news. And all of a sudden everybody's like, wow, why are there all of a sudden so many hurricanes or so many fires all over the country? It's like, no, they've always been there. It's just, we had this big one that affected a lot of people.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing, because the news is riding off that, because they're just trying to sell stuff, they're just trying to, prescription meds, probably mostly. But anyway, that's their job. Like that's what they're doing. That's their function. At the end of the day, their business. And so, you see that and it just kind of pumps through and we get hooked into that. And that can be anything, that can be anything that happens, typically a negative thing. And they'll just kind of preach on that. But it's very similar with everything we're getting fed just on our smartphones and our feeds on social media. I mean, the algorithms, like they know what affects you, what makes you stop and read or click. And they're just going to keep sending that because they're like, oh, we got something there. We sense something, disturbance in the force. So we're just going to continue that down that way. So, I mean, and to your point, like even people that are aware of it, we still maybe don't compute that quick. Don't realize that, like,
I still fall for it from time to time. Like it'll catch you in your tracks. You're like, oh, what's going on here? Do I need to know about it? The answer is generally no.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. I have people that I'm friends with. I mean, I have people that I'm either friends with or just kind of associate with in some way on both sides of the political aisle that will just constantly send me, DMs with like this story and that story and this tragedy and that tragedy and these horrible things that are happening either way. And, I'll go away from it for a while. I just won't open that inbox and I won't read any of that stuff and I'll kind of forget about it and I'll move on with my life and I'll focus on other things. And like when big things do happen that are all over every news source, then I'm like, okay, maybe I'll pay a little more attention to that and read into that. This is something that's 100% sounds like it's real. It's multiple sources and all that. But then I'll go in that DM box, I don't know, a week or two later, and I see all these messages from them and I open them up and I look at them and it's just like, you'd think the world was falling apart. The sky was falling. You think that we're in the midst of it, of this big rebellion.
Apocalypse.
Yeah, exactly. On either side, it's like whether I get it from Gary or Alice, whoever it is, and I'll like read, what they had written or what they had sent me, and it's completely different narratives, but it's the same thing. That's why I say they're very similar. They're just like very, very minimal trust in government, very minimal trust in anybody that thinks different than them, and just thinking that they are, the kind of that victim mentality. Not that,
well, let me ask you this,
bad things aren't happening. I'm not saying that. I'm just,
no, I mean, they certainly are, but I agree with you. I don't think they're happening at a statistical rate that is beyond what was normal. We just have access to the fact that they are going on. And that doesn't diminish that for the person going through that's horrible. But
totally.
I don't know if the human brain is capable of computing or processing that level of bombardment. Ladies and gentlemen, we are rapidly approaching the holiday season, which means that you need to be thinking about gifts. If you want to give a gift that actually has some substance, that everyone really loves, I'll highly recommend a product that I personally use every day and can stand behind. Firecracker Farm Hot Salt. Firecracker Farm is a sponsor, yes, but that's not why I talk about them. I choose to do so because it's a genuinely great product. It's fantastic, small batch, made with care, and it delivers. Delicious is really an understatement. It has the perfect heat to flavor ratio that you can fully control and elevates everything you put it on, from eggs to steak to chicken, or even as something as simple as pasta. The gear is solid too. It comes in a really nice stainless steel push grinder. It's well built and feels right in your hand. I have to say, it has a great tactile quality that makes it super satisfying to use. I'm telling you, you want this, and it makes an awesome gift. The best part is, when you buy one, you're supporting a small American family business, and you're buying something that's truly high quality that you'll use every single day. Alex and his family put a ton of love and dedication into this product. One small catch, you are not going to find this on Amazon last minute. They make hot salt in small batches, and inventory goes quickly. So if you want this, you need to make the move now, because they are going to sell out. So get your gift shopping done today. Head over to firecracker.farm and use the code Ironclad, all caps, all one word, at checkout, and you're going to get 10% off of your order. Today's episode is brought to you by DeleteMe. We have talked a lot about people getting caught in timeshare scams, falling for pig butchering schemes, or getting those mysterious text messages that you have no idea where they came from. I've spoken with guests who hunt hackers and work to protect people's personal information. But here's the thing. Your data, your personal data, your name, your address, your phone number, even your relatives' names can be bought and sold online by data brokers, putting you at risk for identity theft, scams, and harassment. Now, that is why we have partnered with DeleteMe. Like the experts we've had on the show who actively stop hackers and scammers, DeleteMe works behind the scenes to remove your personal information from hundreds of people search and data broker sites. They do it continuously, securely, and without outsourcing. Plus, real privacy advisors are available for custom requests, so you're never on your own. DeleteMe has been the leading service for removing personally identifiable information for over 15 years. They verify your data is actually on these sites before requesting removal, reducing unnecessary exposure. Wirecutter named them the #1 service of its kind, and judges, journalists, creators, and podcasters all trust DeleteMe to protect their privacy. Nowadays, this isn't just a nice to have. I feel like it's an essential. And DeleteMe makes it super easy. Just create your account, enter in your basic information on the dashboard, and they're going to do the rest. Within about a week, the first report arrives showing exactly what has been removed. Take control of your digital privacy today at joindeleteme.com/ironclad and use the coupon code Ironclad, all one word, all uppercase. You can also scan the QR code to get started. It's one of the few services actively keeping your personal information out of the wrong hands. You exist kind of in a unique place because for a while, and I remember reading this from a distance, you were directly involved, whether you wanted to be or not, with this one of these situations that trended quite a bit. Specifically, I'm talking about Colin Kaepernick, what happened with the NFL. I don't want to put into words what he was trying to do, but essentially he was protesting. It was during the national anthem. From my understanding, he was sitting while his team was standing, and then that's kind of the area where you got connected with him a little bit. And then it almost seems like you guys became intertwined, again by design or whether or not you wanted it to. That's just the kind of the way that it goes. But what did it feel like to be involved in one of these situations that was flying everywhere? And depending on what level or angle of the aisle that you sat on, it was 100% talked about in different perspectives. So however you want to, maybe just kind of unpack the whole thing for the listeners so they can understand what we're talking about.
Sure. And I'll just give a quick 30-second background on my story that kind of led to that too. But so I was 9/11 happened when I was 20 years old, growing up in the Bay Area. Just not a ton of people, because you grew up in the Bay as well, not a ton of people in our community, or maybe not so much in our communities, but I guess socially, or it just wasn't a thing we recognized as much, join the military, right? And so I wasn't really around that culture. Also growing up in relative peacetime, very different as well. Graduated high school, didn't go to college, worked on a fishing boat, took some firefighting classes, trying to figure out who I was going to be, what I was going to do with my life. And I was 20 years old, and I was living in Los Angeles at that time, and 9/11 happens. And of course it affected everybody. I was a very impressionable person at that age. And you just hear so many different things about, I mean, including all the conspiracies around it about, what's going on there. But what I really remember was 9/12, on Franklin Street where I lived in sort of East Hollywood. Like there was a parade the next day, people walking in the streets, you know, red, white, and blue, guy dressed like Uncle Sam, like, hey, we're still standing, we're here together. I'm sure that was happening all over the country. And it was a
Yep.
really cool feeling. It was the first time I felt a little patriotic, and just like that sense of pride. Not that I grew up, anti-American in any way. It just wasn't something I thought about. I think I was just lucky. I had a good family. My parents were two hardworking people that I had, I was able to look up to, and I just had good examples in that way. And it just wasn't something I realized I took for granted, as a lot of people do. Fast forward to, a few years later, I joined the military, went into the special forces, spent, 5 years on active duty doing that. And then transitioned into the Texas National Guard, went to the University of Texas and fulfilled this childhood dream of playing football. Walked onto the UT football team, never played football in my life. Loved it, my favorite sport, played other sports, but it was this
Yep.
regret that I hadn't just done it. And at that point, coming out of the military, it was like, okay, so if I get cut, I don't make the team. Who cares? Like life goes on, doesn't matter. I don't want to live with this. Like, I wish I would have tried that thing, whatever it is. And so I was fortunate to make it. Found my way on the field as a long snapper, which is a very thankless job. You don't have to be the best athlete in the world, but you got to be consistent and you got to be accurate, and you got to be able to block out the noise. And I learned those things from the military, just like being taught to shoot a pistol. I let myself be taught through YouTube to long snap a football in the same way. It was like stance, grip, sight picture, for lack of a better term, aim small, miss small, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. All of those things, all the tenets we learned translated into playing football for me. And it got me a scholarship. I started for 3 years at Texas, and then I had an opportunity with the Seattle Seahawks at 34 years old, and knew I was a long shot. And knew it probably wouldn't last that long. And sure enough, it didn't. But I got to play in one game, and it was an incredible experience just to be there in Seattle and get that opportunity. I remember being on the sidelines when the anthem played, and just leading the team out of the flag, out with the American flag, and then being there, and the anthem starts playing, and I'm thinking about a buddy of mine that passed, a couple years prior, and I'm thinking about people still deployed, and I'm thinking about those that came home and maybe didn't feel that sense of purpose, or like they were worthy of chasing their American dream like I was doing, and it just kind of like all these emotions hit me at once. I started crying. After the anthem ends, like people like, I'm not kidding, like Marshawn Lynch and Richard Sherman, these like villains of the NFL coming up, like hugging on me, dapping me up, like super. It was just a cool moment. One of those moments people don't get to see. Um, and then 3 days later, I'm cut. Football's over. Now, that was longer than 30 seconds. That was like 3 minutes, but whatever.
No, that's right. I love it.
But now it's a year later. And as you said, Colin Kaepernick, who was a 49er player. I was a massive 49er fan growing up in the Bay Area. Colin Kaepernick was my favorite favorite newer player, because when I was a kid, it was like Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Roger Craig, Ronnie
Hell
Lott,
yeah.
5 Super Bowls, like the dynasty. And then we sucked for like 15 years. And then here comes this Colin Kaepernick guy from University of Nevada, kind of a long shot. I'm here in Reno today, right down the streets, the school he went to. And he's from, I believe Turlock, I think is the name of the town, but he's from Northern California area, kind of a hometown guy. I was like, oh, this is so cool. And, he's he was like maybe a 3rd round draft pick or something. So not meant to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, but insane athlete, got us to a Super Bowl, almost won it. It was just like, finally, we've got this stud. If I was going to buy a jersey, I would have bought a Kaepernick jersey. And I had this signed football. So Colt McCoy was a quarterback right before I got to Texas. If people don't know who that is, you can look him up. Like, great American, but also a really good quarterback. Almost won the Heisman Trophy, played in the NFL for a dozen years. And for a charity I was working with, he'd gotten me this signed football by him, because he was the backup quarterback for the Niners when they went to the Super Bowl, by him and Kaepernick. Or maybe not when they went to the Super Bowl, but he was a backup quarterback at the time, I think in 2014 or something like that. Signed by Colt McCoy and Colin Kaepernick, and it said, "God bless our troops!" exclamation point on it. And Cap wrote that, So I was like, that's pretty cool. And so it's in my parents' house, still to this day. And this guy was my new favorite player in the NFL. However, at this time also, as we mentioned on, and not diminishing these things because they're horrible things that happen, but all over the media, there was quite a bit of, what had been happening in these communities where police officers, when maybe an unarmed person of color was shot or killed, they're on paid leave while the investigation is going on, and that's probably been happening forever. I don't know, but now this is all in the news, in the media, and like these people feel like they're protected, and we're seeing these horrible things happen. This is before George Floyd, for those that don't, realize the timing and everything. But people like Breonna Taylor and Trayvon Martin, and there was just a lot of these stories, and it was felt like it was coming to a head. Couple that with, this is 2016 in September. We're in the middle of an election cycle between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Very divisive, maybe the most divisive one. I mean, not that they've been less divisive in recent years, but you know what I mean. It was certainly all over the place. And now we're like, that's also the kind of social media is peaking at this time. And it's just all this noise. And Colin starts sitting on the bench during the preseason games. He's sitting on the bench. I think he'd done it for 2 games, and it wasn't really noticed the first game, but the second game he had done it. He was sitting on the bench during the anthem, and a reporter asked him, "Is there a reason you're sitting?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm paraphrasing because he said a lot more than this, but he said, I'm not going to stand for the flag of a country that oppresses Black people and people of color." And that's all I heard initially, because that's what was sort of reported on, and headlines like that, and I was just like immediately disappointed and hurt, because I was like, man, like, why do you have to get political? Why do you have to, why do you have to do that? Why do you have to go there? Why can't you just play football? And I had a bunch of people hitting me up about it, because I had, been in the NFL for 2 seconds a year before. You need to tell him something or other. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I don't even know the guy. I can't do that.
Oh, now after 2 seconds in the NFL, you're the commissioner.
Yeah, exactly.
Right on top of, I got a direct Batman line to Colin Kaepernick.
And also all of a sudden I'm the authority on anthem culture or whatever, like what I'm supposed to, I'm like, this is way above my pay grade. So that's happening. And then I'm starting to get hit up by, because the year before, my story had gotten some press because I was this 34-year-old guy trying to play in the NFL, and I'm not the biggest guy in the world, and the background in the military, like it makes sense that it was, there was a story there, and because of that, all those publications from CNN to Fox News to MSNBC to the Times, every Times you can imagine, like the papers, they're all reaching out. But some of the TV ones wanted me to come on their shows and debate this topic, why he's right, why he's wrong, whatever. Like, that's all they're trying to do, is sell stuff, as we said. So it's like, come on my show, debate this situation, and they all assume, because I wear camouflage, that I would just be like this ardent, you stand for the flag no matter what, I don't care, like whatever, which is fine if you feel that way. But I was like I feel that way because of my experience in the military, and being handed a folded flag and carrying a casket with my best friend's body in it, draped in an American flag. Yes, those symbols mean something very different to me, for sure. But that doesn't necessarily mean everybody has that connection, or even a little bit of that connection. And maybe they have a negative connection for something they've experienced in their life. And that's valid. Whether I agree with it or not, I think it's valid. I should maybe respect that at least a little bit. And so I kind of had a nuanced feeling about it. And also, I wasn't thrilled about the way we were headed as a society with this, division and never like listening to the other side and trying to like reason a bit or just consider that somebody with a different background or experience is going to feel different than me. It doesn't make them just pure evil. It just makes them different. And maybe there's a way maybe if we met and talked, we'd realize, oh, wait, actually, yeah, I kind of agree. Okay, I understand that at least. Maybe I don't agree, but I understand. And
Yeah.
that's huge. I mean, that's what keeps us moving forward, I think. Anyway, I agreed to write an open letter to the Army Times or through the Army Times to Colin Kaepernick because the Army Times I felt was very harmless. No offense. Not a lot of people read it, the Military Times. I just didn't think. I'm like, I know they'll let me write whatever I want. They'd reached out a couple of times. Hey, you can write anything. We won't edit it. We'll let you. And I was like, all right, if you allow me to do that, then yes, I'll do it. I don't want it to be. I'm not trying to write an op-ed per se,
Yeah.
which is still what they called it because it is an editorial. But I was like, I'd rather just write an open letter as if I had 5 minutes with him and he'd asked me a question about my feelings on this thing. And so I did. And I just explained my background, some of my experiences. I'd done some relief work in the Darfur before joining the military. Part of that time over there, that the oppression that I saw, the people that, in the midst of a genocide, like that inspired me to join the military because the Special Forces motto, De Oppresso Liber, means to free the oppressed. And I wanted to be a part of that, whatever it looked like, as ignorance is not the right word, but as naive as I was, about how that all actually worked, that just was something that hit me as a person in the early 20s. And, I think the words oppression get thrown around, were getting thrown around at the time a lot, and maybe are still today. And I'm not saying at some level that does not exist, but there's levels. There are levels to everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like genocide. Now that's another word that's thrown around, maybe more than needs to be. And it's like, when you look at certain situations, I think that maybe is valid. And this, of course, my opinion. In other situations, you're like, I don't know if I would call that a genocide. I would call that horrible things. And
Yeah.
maybe, people, being killed at large numbers, maybe even, but like, where's the line? I don't know. And it's just every day.
If it means everything, it means nothing simultaneously.
Exactly. I love that because I say that all the time to people too. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
we're all good people at our core, which means we're all bad people at the same time. So anyway, I wrote this letter explaining my background, but also saying like, I do respect your opinion and I respect what you're doing and why you're doing it. Cause I went back and listened to that full, he had this initial 18-minute interview he did. And out of that, a couple quotes were plucked and made headlines.
Of course. Yeah.
But in that interview, he talked about the massive respect he had for the military, the men and women in uniform, and what they stand for. He just felt that really what those symbols represent, the country, the ideals, we weren't living up to those. And I don't disagree with that. I think we still are falling quite short of where we could be and where we should be as a society, as developed as we are, the potential that we have. And we do a lot. We are the most charitable country in the world. We're very extremely diverse. Like, we have a lot of challenges and we still find a way through it. And look, nobody's trying to leave. Everybody's trying to get in. That hasn't changed even through all this turmoil. However, we could do a hell of a lot better. You know what I mean? We really can.
Yeah.
Top to bottom. People people that are just barely getting by and people that are running the world, we could all do better. So, I kind of wrote this letter saying, I hear you. I respect, what you're doing and really why you're doing it. At the same time, this is why I feel the way I feel. And these are some of the things that I experienced. And, I hope there's we can figure out a way to fix these things because, I look forward to the day that you are actually inspired to stand during the anthem, and I'll be standing right there next to you, and then I signed it, De Oppresso Liber, Nate Boyer. you can go read the letter. It's still out there if people want to check that out, because I definitely paraphrased that and I probably forgot.
Yeah.
the
What do you think the impact of the letter was going to be? Or did you have any expectations?
Not really an expectation, because I'd never really written anything, to be completely honest. I mean, of course, for school and stuff, but never something that was public like that. Never
Yeah.
really a statement, I guess. And not that I didn't put a ton of thought into it, but I kind of didn't, in a way. I just was, I wrote it in about an hour and a half, and it was just the way I was feeling. And it was just like, I was, more than anything, I was hurt at how divided we were, and now still are. That really affected me. It bothered me. Um, but also it was like I had quickly become, fell victim to it, where I see something, I read something, I make a snap decision about a person and their ideals, and why they're doing what they're doing. And, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know, because they haven't had my experience. So they don't know anything, and it's just like so arrogant. And so I just like feeling that, and I kind of just let it flow and put it out there, sent it to them, thinking, I didn't even think about the digital side. I just thought they were going to print it and put it on their little Army Times. And so, when you're on base and you're going to the latrine, like maybe you pick up a copy. I don't know.
The 6 people who read the print copy are like, oh, check this out.
Exactly. Like I just no clue. And then I went to bed. I sent it. I went to bed. They printed it or ran it or whatever you call it. I woke up and like my voicemail box is full. My email has a ton of, people reaching out. The text, social media was like blowing up. Like people, like, a bunch of, kind of in the sports world mostly, but some stars and kind of legends of different sports were like sharing it. And of course the media, reporters and journalists were putting it out there. And I was like, oh no, here we go. But hey, I made that decision. I mean, I didn't regret it. I just was like, dang, this is crazy. And Colin's publicist ended up reaching out, and she said that Colin wanted to meet and have a conversation about it. And at first I was like a little nervous, of course. But then she'd said like, no, he was inspired by the letter. He thought it was pretty powerful, and it really connected with him. So is there any way you can make it down to San Diego tomorrow? They're playing the Chargers in their final preseason game, and he'd like to meet. And so I said, sure. I was only 2 or 3 hours away, so I went down. We met. You spent some time in San Diego, so we met. We met in the lobby of the team hotel, which was in Horton Plaza. The West,
no, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I think the Westin there or something like that.
Yeah,
but
yeah, right by where Qualcomm.
Yeah, exactly. And there's not by Qualcomm, in Gaslamp.
Oh, okay. So
right,
downtown.
Yeah,
okay, yeah,
closer to Petco, where the
okay
Padres, but I think it's Petco, wherever the Padres.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, right downtown, and they've got these big windows in the lobby. We went in the lobby, and there's these big windows, and people are walking by while we're sitting there. And Colin has like an afro. He's very recognizable, and he's all over the news. And people are walking by, like taking selfies through the window with him in the background. And and Eric Reed joined us, one of the other players for the 49ers, and we just had a conversation about all of this, and just really getting a chance to like listen to him and listen to Eric, and just like me, they were even younger. These young people that were just passionate about something.
Was he able to articulate to you the impact he was hoping his actions would have? Because he obviously personally, I mean, it's almost 2026 at this point. He didn't play after that year, if I'm not mistaken.
He played that season.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that was kind of the end of it, though. It was like
the end of it. Yeah. I think the way it worked out was he opted out of his contract with the Niners because he had some injuries. Like, look, he took us to the Super Bowl, or took the Niners, not us, took the Niners to the Super Bowl in 2012. And this is in 2016. Since then, he had won. The next year, he went back to the NFC Championship, almost won it in 13. And then 14 and 15, he had some injuries and struggled a bit. Numbers dropped. He actually had become a backup, I think, during the 15 season.
I think you're right, yeah.
And then in 16, he played a good amount of the year. after that, but he started the season as a backup, and then maybe I can't remember if there was an injury or he won that starting job, but the team didn't do very well. I think we only won a couple of games, and but he had good numbers, but he'd opted out of the contract with the 49ers, hoping to find a place somewhere else, and the Broncos offered him, but I don't know exactly, but I think it was for quite a bit less money.
Yeah.
So maybe they had offered him to come in and compete for the starting job, but it wasn't necessarily a guarantee that he would have it. And, after you took a team out of obscurity to the Super Bowl, you feel a certain way. And he had the numbers and stats and tape to prove that when he was playing at that level. But, he hadn't been the couple of years after. But anyway, so he opted out of that Niners contract, turned down the Broncos, and then it became this situation where there was teams, a couple teams met with him. I think the Seahawks, I think the Ravens, I think teams had reached out, eventually the Raiders years later, but they didn't sign him, and I don't know the details of all that. I wasn't in those rooms. I don't want to pretend, but to know, but I think the core of it, maybe from the team side, was a fear of dividing the fan base. Like, is this going to be too much of a media circus? Is it worth it? And then I think on the other side of things, it felt like, we're just being blackballed, completely from the NFL. And I would argue that there probably was teams, owners, management that were like, nope, not signing him no matter what. I don't want that. I don't want that energy around. I don't want that in my locker room. And like, whether you agree with it or not, it is also a business. And like, that's, there's validity there. It may not be right, but it's a thing.
Are you looking for the perfect gift for the tactical or preparedness enthusiast in your life? TechPack delivers professional grade gear every month, including EDC essentials, tactical tools, and training aids, perfect for anyone who takes their gear seriously. This December, TechPack gets even better. The December Plus box is going to be packed with exclusive training tools, EDC equipment, and high-value items designed to level up any gear setup. They are also offering special holiday boxes. There's going to be a Christmas and Black Friday edition, and they are going to be stacked with premium high-quality gear, making them the perfect gift for yourself or someone on your list. And right now, if you use the code Ironclad, all one word, all caps, you're going to get a free tactical gift worth $70, bringing your total value to over $400 for signing up. So visit TacPack.com, use code Ironclad, and get the kind of gear that doesn't just sit on the shelf. Was he able to articulate what he wanted the outcome to be? Because I'm a fan of people living a life however they want to. Because I got asked about this one a bunch too, because I had hosted a different podcast, my personal podcast. The number of email volume of questions like, what do you think about this? And my answer is, the military and service exists so people can do this if they want to. This is what freedom looks like. Freedom is not, hey, you only get to do the things that I like. It's, the First Amendment is not about what I get to say. It's the freedoms of other people to do and say what they want, even if it boils my blood.
Yep.
So I am not against somebody doing that, but somebody in that position, if they're intelligent, they need to be balancing the consequences, because there will be social optics for other potential future employers. Like if you were a football team looking at that in 2016 into 2017, and you weren't considering the potential fallout from your fan base, I would almost argue you're not actually serving your business very well. Is that fair? Not necessarily, but it goes back to the actions that we take. So I'm curious, he had to have known that. Was he, in your mind, or when he was able to talk to you, was he just trying to drive awareness? Was he trying to drive change? Because they're very two different things, and there's a lot of breadcrumbs between those two things.
I think he was trying to drive change. I do. And I'll say maybe I didn't know what to ask and all that, but we certainly didn't get into what measurables looked like, what was the measurable goal. I mean, he straight up he would say things like, I'm not going to stand until I see things change. And I didn't.
I mean, that's broad. I get it.
It is broad. I didn't dig deeper. It was also early on in this whole thing. So, look, like I got to give him grace there, because I don't think he knew it was going to, or realized it would blow up quite like it did either. I mean, it happened fast because of
Mhm.
these devices, because of the way media spreads today. It happened very fast. Um, and but if you I would encourage people again to go listen to that 18-minute interview, because while it may not have the details of what the plan looked like, because there may have not have been a full plan yet, he didn't back down from any questions. He was willing to answer every question and talk about it, why he felt the way he felt. And it wasn't just on a whim, it wasn't just completely out of the blue. Like it was very thoughtful in the way that he engaged there. But I didn't ask those questions about like, what are the measurable goals? What does change exactly look like? Because I also was, and probably still am, largely uneducated on the nuance and the detail, and the minutia of the
He might not have had
situation.
the answers anyway,
You know what I
you
mean?
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we talked really about our stories, our backgrounds, and it felt like honestly three guys in a locker room just having a conversation, maybe in a little bit of a debate, but not a negative spirited debate, just kind of a conversation like we all
Mhm.
should have. And at the end of it, you know, he asked, do you think there's another way that I can protest that's not going to offend people in the military? And I really appreciated that. I did say quickly, no, there's nothing you can do. I think at some level, people are going to be offended. And I certainly don't speak for the military or the veteran community or anything except myself, any organization. Um, so I don't want to pretend to have a stance beyond my own. But I just said, to me, sitting on the bench, kind of isolated away from the team, doesn't really feel like you're engaged anyway. It feels like you're kind of literally just sitting it out, like you're just not
Yeah.
interested. That's how it plays to me, and that's
I
my
agree with that assessment too. It looked a little odd, especially from somebody who's supposed to be in a leadership role as a
right.
quarterback,
Exactly, you're the
physically
quarterback,
separated from the team. Yeah, it was a little bit of an odd look.
right? And and to be fair, again, to not I'm not defending him, but just trying to get in his brain. Like he, maybe didn't like what else would I how else can I do this? Or, maybe he
Mhm.
hadn't gotten there yet. And that's what he was maybe looking for through this conversation. So by asking that question, I said, whatever you do, I think you should be next to you should be alongside your teammates. Like when you go out on the field, um, you're shoulder to shoulder with these guys, just like we are in the military, right? We're all very diverse all over the map. Like we've got, um, people, you go into a football locker room, just like in the military team room, and we're from all over the map, all over the country, very different opinions and backgrounds and feelings and experiences. And that's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it cool. And that's what I think that's one of the things that makes the military, it's the most diverse microcosm in America, I think, in a lot of ways. And
I
I think
agree.
that's what makes it
Yeah.
makes it great. I mean, I love that. And I said, so I think you should be alongside these guys because you're going to go out on that field and you're going to be in that. You're also next to these guys. You're with them. You're fighting alongside your brothers, and of course it's a game, but like it is also a symbol maybe and a message for the rest of the country. It's like we don't always have to agree, but sometimes we still got to work together to figure out, to go win, figure out how we win as a group, and so he quickly agreed with that. He was like, I'm with you, but I've already committed to not standing until things change. Again, we didn't get into the details of what that looked like, but
Mhm.
I just said, and maybe I should have put more thought into it, but my my feelings were just, well, look, I mean, I think the only thing that makes logistical sense is taking a knee. And to me, it's not a disrespectful gesture. People take a knee to pray, propose to their future spouse, when a player on the field is hurt, the other players take a knee out of respect until he's, either walks off, carted off, carried off the field. Um, and when I go visit Arlington to visit, a buddy, um, that's buried there, I often will crouch down or take a knee and just kind of
Yeah.
spend a moment. It's just like it's one of those things. And he agreed again, pretty quickly that was what he's going to do. He's like, all right, I'm in. And I'll be completely honest, Andy, for a moment, because he wanted me, to maybe be there with him. And for a moment, I considered doing it with him, which,
Taking a knee with him.
yeah, just because I
Yeah.
was like, what's more important to me is that we just come together. We just listen to each other. And if somebody's willing to give and willing to um, compromise, I guess, in some way, I don't like that word compromise because it feels like giving up. But if someone's willing to find a middle ground and like listen to somebody else and be like, okay, we have a different background, maybe don't disagree or maybe don't agree on everything, but like, I'll do that. You suggested it. I'll do that if you think it's not going to offend people in the military as much. And I was like, I felt like, well, I need to do something too. I need to do something that showing that I'm like supporting this. And I considered that. And then, I thought more about it and I was like, I just don't, I didn't personally want to do that.
Yeah.
I wanted to stand because I do feel differently. When I hear that song, I do feel this swelling of pride, and I do feel those emotions like I felt on the sideline in that one game I played for the Seahawks. And so I said, you know what? I'm not going to kneel. Like I'll stand right next to you though, and he appreciated that. So I stood next to him with my hand on my heart. Him and Eric Reed, Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed took a knee next to one another. As soon as the anthem started playing, they took that knee. What stands out to me more than anything, first of all, it was the week of the 15th anniversary of 9/11, or at least the last home game before that. And we're in San Diego, which is a very military town.
Yep.
There's a flyover with Navy SEALs jumping in the stadium, and there was a sailor on the field. Actually, he was a black sailor singing the anthem. And they had everybody out there in full uniform. It was just a very symbolic moment, not intentional. They didn't know Kaepernick was going to take a knee at this moment, but he takes the knee. And what sticks out to me more than anything, sadly, was just the smattering of boo that I heard from the crowd, like heavy. And I was like, okay, I understand that affects you, but to me, that is way more disrespectful than somebody taking a knee after having a conversation like we had, which they didn't know that, but still.
Yeah.
And it just, that's what really stuck out in that moment. Of course, that, he continued on with that and other players did it. I mean, there was players in the European soccer leagues that were kneeling before the games, took a moment to take a knee and then would play the game. And it just became this thing, which I obviously had no idea. Just like the letter, I didn't think it would go, viral or whatever. But it did. And I don't think it's necessarily I don't think it's a bad thing. I think there's just a lot of misunderstandings as to why that happened, where that came from, the conversation that we had. But also the intent. I think a lot of people, and part of this is media's fault, but part of it is us just making those rash decisions and judgments. They see it as an anti-American or anti-military protest, or anti everything, and I'm like, that's not what I got from it. That's not what I thought it was about. I thought it was more about accountability and doing better and fixing these things. And it did lead to a lot of that. I think it led to a lot of, there was a lot of programs and a lot of players around the league who were like, all right, the action I'm going to take is like, I want to work with law enforcement and I want to work with young people in these communities, or not just young people in these communities, and do more to like break these walls down and help them get to know one another and understand where the other person is coming from so that we can maybe repair some of this stuff. And better training, within law enforcement, because there was a lot of people who they didn't have the level of training that you and I had, not even close, and they're out there.
Yeah, they never will. It's just such a different job in a larger organization.
Totally different.
Yeah.
So
what kind of feedback did you get by standing next to him while he kneeled? Because I feel like your inbox might have had a few things in there that were, I'll call spicy.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. I mean, it was across the board. I mean, I will say, and you don't notice it, you don't recognize it in the time because you don't. It's just like when you're working on something and a bunch of people tell you a good job, but that one person critiques you. You remember the critique.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? The good jobs, you're like, whatever.
Yeah, it's the negative feedback bias.
Yeah, exactly. Major negative feedback bias. So by and large, most people were very positive, supportive, regardless of where they sat on either side. There was quite a few people that were like, I hadn't thought of it this way. I appreciate you having that conversation. I felt all this way or all that way. And now I don't, and now I at least understand. I still disagree either way, but like, I get it and I appreciate that. And that was nice. But there were also some quite negative ones. And of course, a lot of those that you just ignore because it's some random, who knows on social media, just piping off but
Yeah.
the tough part was the people that I knew. And, the one that really hit me the hardest was a guy who, was also, and he was also a Green Beret but he'd been wounded overseas, he fortunate to make it home, and God bless him. Nothing but respect for that. But, he said, you're a disgrace to the Green Beret, and that hurts. That hurts. It feels like a family member disowning you, basically. And
you know what, though? Like, what the disgrace is that somebody thinking because of their experiences, they own everybody else's.
Yeah.
I got shot overseas too. You know what it means? Nothing. I got an enemy marksmanship award, which is what I call the Purple Heart. Nobody's bucking for that one. And it gives me no ability to take ownership over the flag or what the flag means or should mean to somebody else. Like, people can take those type of comments and just go pack it in their lunch. I mean, that's actually unbecoming of somebody who has earned a Green Beret to say something like that. Because in my opinion, that's why we serve.
Right. I appreciate that. And I also honor that statement that person said, because of it may have just been it's just a feeling they had and they just,
Yeah, but we're taught not to do that, aren't we, Nate?
You what?
We're taught not to do that, though, aren't we? In the community we come
You're
from.
not wrong. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I just
maintain control of your emotions.
I do. You're right. You're right. But I can relate. I do know what that feels like.
I get it. Of course, I've yet to make a mistake in my life, so I can't understand how people can, of course. No, having fallen short of every ideal that I would like to espouse to, like, I totally get it. I've had my moments, but I always follow those moments up, or I try to, with a secondary email of like, you know what, man? Actually, after letting some steam out of this relief valve, I've thought about this, and maybe I don't agree with what you did, but you know what? I respect the hell out of you for doing it. And I was wrong.
Right. No, that's big. And honestly, I don't even remember because there was so much comms throughout that, but I feel like they either did or they didn't apologize, but they apologized by reconnecting later and just like it never happened. Do you know what I mean? And I take those as, because some people that's just not in their vocabulary.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was
that
wrong.
particular, yeah. Like you're saying, so the national anthem for me, man, to this day, I struggle to choke back tears when I
especially when you're in these situations and there's this huge crowd of people and we're from all over the place. And it's full of immigrants and it's full of people on both sides of the political aisle and every race and religion, and we're there and most of the people are standing and a lot of them are singing. Like it gets you.
Yeah.
It just catches you.
And I get why there's that super common emotional reaction to something that you think might be an attack against you or service members. And I have always tried to take a beat in those moments. I mean, how can people, I got asked about this the other day, or anytime I go publicly speak, they ask, like how these experiences you had when you were in the military and then the special operations community, they must be so incredible and you're so fortunate and unique to have them. I'm like, listen, the experiences that we had, you actually can find mostly through organized sports. Right. It's very compressed overseas. And yeah, you should probably pay attention because your head might, invert itself, which is unlikely playing football, hopefully, because I think you have good helmets and nobody's shooting at you. But they're not as unique as you may think. They might be a little bit more extreme and people might pay attention to them that way. But just because we've had those experiences, it doesn't mean, like, if I'm fighting off tears at the national anthem, That doesn't mean that somebody who isn't, who are, or is at a phase or position in their life who is more concerned with our country doing better is wrong.
Right.
It has to apply to all of us. So I can understand why people have that reaction. But I think in general, our society would be better is if they just sat with that, though, for like 10 minutes and think through it a little bit. Is this person actually trying to offend you, or are they trying their best to, maybe it's raise awareness, make a point of their own, right? And also if you don't like it, don't participate in it. That's another one.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's complicated.
I think there's a large population of those people too that wish they felt the emotions you felt. And I think that's valid because I'm a person that I don't think
they're the lucky ones for not having those experiences.
I don't think you choose what you feel, and I don't think you choose what you believe. I think you choose your actions, you choose how you react to things. Of course, you choose, we get to choose a lot. We do get to choose a lot, but certain things like that, I think there's more to it, that until you get to a certain place, you just don't feel that. You don't feel that, and or necessarily believe that. And I think that's also valid and okay. But I think a lot of people they want to believe that, or they want to feel that.
Yeah.
And certainly there's some people that don't. I know plenty of those people in my life that's like, yeah, but no matter what you say, no matter what has happened in their life, they're just, they want something to blame. They want an excuse. There are those people out there.
And that's okay too, because they have to walk the miles in their shoes.
True. True.
Have you kept in contact with Kaepernick?
No, we kept in contact for about a year after that. And not like heavy contact. I mean, like that was the only time we ever met in person, We stayed in touch through text some, and then, things were happening and he, he quickly became, sort of a face for one of these movements, but also like, I think he was careful, and maybe his team somewhat, I don't know, was careful to not be exposed too much and kind of stay somewhat quiet. And I think that upset some people in his camp, or sort of who were backing him. They're like, why aren't you speaking out? Why aren't you doing this and that? And I think for him, he started something called the Know Your Rights campaign and worked on other projects like that. I think for him, it became very important very quickly, to your point, like, I need to understand this fully, and I need to take action and do something that is going to make change, not just expect somebody else to change it, not just shake my fists and be like, fix this thing, and then continue to protest or speak out. It's like, take action, which I greatly respect. And so, with that, we just, like, we weren't friends before. We didn't know each other before that moment. It was a moment in time, but he met a lot of people and was probably, influenced by, inspired by, and learned a hell of a lot more than he learned from having a conversation with me. So yeah, like it was, just one of those things. And, but it was cool. It's cool to see some of the re-engagement back in the community, even though it's quiet, because it's not going to make headlines because it's positive. But like, he was back here. I think he was put into I could be wrong, but I think he was put into like the Nevada Sports Hall of Fame, or the University of Nevada Hall of Honor, or whatever it's called, like recently. And he came back to the school and he he spent time with the players and all the former players he played with, which half of them probably adamantly disagree with him. And he's in there, just with them and with the university. And I think that's super cool. But of course, like, that's not going to be anywhere, because it's like, that's a positive thing. If you went there and,
there was a riot outside.
Yeah, exactly. Then it's all over the news. And it's like, we don't like the bridge building when it comes to media. We just like burning them.
Did it change your thoughts at all about our country? I mean, Colin, that situation, I would say that was pretty, to use a common for now, it was pretty partisan, right? You were either for it or against it, not necessarily left or right.
Right.
Did it change your view at all of our country, kind of living through that to a degree?
I mean, I think it just heightened my awareness of the level of division we were at, and just how people felt like people do feel like you have to take a side, you have to pick. red pill, blue pill, whatever you want to call it. You got to
Yeah.
go like all in on this thing or all in on that thing. And it's so unfair and it's so stupid because every situation has nuance. And because of your experience and connection to it, you may have a different feeling about these two things that maybe are generally a conservative ideal or a liberal ideal. And this idea that, well, open-mindedness is owned by people on the left and patriotism is owned by people on the right. It's absolutely wrong too, because I've met some of the most closed-minded people in my life are very consider themselves very liberal, and some of the most unpatriotic people, very conservative. And it's like, it's wild to me that that's where we're at. And I hope it's changing. I feel like in some ways it is. I think it is sometimes generational. And as much as the young generation, no matter who they've been, we were a young generation at one time. They always get given a hard time because they don't understand, because they haven't lived much. We haven't experienced much. So that's where that comes from. But I also have a lot of hope and optimism and faith that, like, not them alone, but like that I think we can break some of these cycles, and we will, because I think they look up at us, no matter which way we are leaning, and are just like, this is ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, this is not right. This is not, whether.
Well, let me tell you what my own kids say, who are 22, 20, and 17. They look up at us and they go, hey, do you guys know that you're stupid? You guys are idiots. It's
Good.
like, yeah,
they're not
I remember
wrong.
saying that about my parents' generation too. So good. The torch is being passed. You got it.
Exactly.
But like, not all the way, but like, we can work together. But at some point you guys need to take the reins, and guess what? Your kids are going to call you stupid.
Yeah, exactly. And that's okay. That's all right. I appreciate that. I don't even have kids yet. And I want to, and I will at some point. But I hope I want them to be individuals, and I want them to take ownership of their society, and fix what's wrong. And, because not everything is wrong. We've done a lot of really cool things over the last, few generations or whatever too. And incredible stuff. Like, but when it comes to this, it's a big one, and it does affect us. And it just hypnotizes some people too. It just controls their every day.
I know. And they are some of the most unhappy people I've ever seen. That hypnotism, it robs their capability and capacity for joy. I have no data to support that. Purely anecdotal from the people that I have seen, though. The ones who are the most ideologically attached, and people, live your life however you want to, but I'm telling you, the ones who are most ideologically attached, oftentimes I have seen, are the most argumentative and unhappy.
No, I'm with you. I completely agree. Because it's always about just being right. Every
conversation becomes circular. It becomes this self-licking ice cream cone. You could be, we're getting ready for Thanksgiving, and we'll be talking about the turkey, and then that somehow leads to politics. You're like, okay.
Thanksgiving can quickly lead to politics. The holiday itself, it doesn't. It's an easy one.
Yeah. Some turkey, some booze, and a fist fight between uncles and
what's more American than that?
I don't know. Going across the river and killing people on Christmas, I think. I don't know. That's probably about.
I am excited for that George Washington movie, by the way. I think it comes out right around 4th of July next year, which is
okay. I didn't even know they were working on one, to be honest. I'm not super tied into the Hollywood scene.
250th birthday of America.
Who's playing G-Dub?
I don't even know if I recognize him, because he was pretty young when this all happened. Of course, he's portrayed,
it's a salty, gray hair. Yeah,
exactly. And when this was all, going down, that was not the case. So, it's a guy that the actor's probably in his, late 20s, early 30s, I'm guessing, just by kind of seeing some of the little clips. But I'm like, good. Hopefully they really lean into like this accuracy, because, he was I have not yet seen, but I want to watch this Ken Burns documentary about the revolution, because what a complicated character he was. And he gets a lot of negative because he was a slave owner, and he had this, but later in his life, he released those people. He knew he owned his shit. He was like, I was wrong. I'm wrong. If I'm going to stand for this and say that, and lead this country that I so much believe in, I can't, I'm such a hypocrite for doing that, for also doing this, you know what I mean? When I'm saying all men are created equal, etc. And so
Yeah.
very interesting. So I'm super interested in seeing that film, and I hope they hit all that nuance, because he, no doubt, a complicated individual who had a lot of regrets, but also was an incredible leader and took some crazy risks. And sometimes it wasn't maybe the smartest decision, but they put themselves in a situation and fought their way out and figured it out. And like that's so interesting, because that's leadership, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We're not perfect at all.
Yeah. As much as people would like to believe, for sure. Tell me about your organization, MVP.
Yeah, to speak on the point, you sort of brought it up organically, talking about the similarities in sports and the military. Merging vets and players, MVP for sure. What we do essentially is we bring together veterans and athletes, and we help them find purpose and identity when they lose a uniform. I went through a bit of that crisis myself, not so much coming out of the military, because I went right into football, but it was really leaving football, getting cut from Seattle and losing that locker room and that jersey, something I identified with so much, similar to the camouflage, and that honestly everybody else identifies you with as well. Like, somebody that's in the military, you make these, assumptions about them, most of them positive, to be completely honest, but you still, you feel a certain way about them. And then similar with athletes, they see that jersey, and we make that identification with them as a human being. There's not a lot of professions out there where we sort of do that. But as the individual themselves, as the veteran or the athlete, we feel that connection, that camaraderie. We have that locker room structure, sacrifice, albeit very different sacrifice. The sacrifices you're willing to make on the battlefield versus the ball field, but similar in the sense of, if you want to be elite, you gotta put a lot of work and time in, and this is who you are. You really do become this. And then when you lose it, you're pretty young. I mean, you can stay in the military for a long time, but you're not kicking doors down forever. There is a timeline on that. And in sports, oftentimes these guys peak in their mid-20s. I mean, maybe athletically, maybe that was Colin Kaepernick as well. You know what I mean? And that's a scary thing to think that I've got hopefully at least 2/3 of my life, if not more, left, and I'll never be great again. I've peaked, I've hit my prime, and now it's just put me out to pasture for the next 60 years or whatever. Like that's weird. You know what I mean? That's not normal, because pretty much every other profession and whatever it is we're pursuing as a person, you just keep getting better and better and learning more and becoming more educated. You can do a lot of these things forever, but not those. And also, you're sort of heroes to each other and to a lot of people. So people really look up to you, and then you just feel this massive sense of responsibility and purpose, and like, I'm part of something great, and this is what we are doing. We are trying to when you're in the military, you're trying to make the world a better place, and you're trying to fight for those that can't fight for themselves. When you're playing sports, yes, it's entertainment, but like, go to that stadium, whether it's the anthem or the game, watch the crowd put away all the BS, and just, I don't care if the guy next to me spills beer on me in the first quarter. If we score a game-winning touchdown in the fourth, we're hugging. I don't even know this guy. Like, talk about bringing people together. Like, that is a very unique thing around sports. It's like that energy in a stadium, and it's just, it's so addictive, and the adrenaline and all that. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's gone. And unless you're a superstar, and even those guys struggle, like, they kind of just forget about you. Next man up, who's next. But even some of these legends, Randy Couture is a great example. Randy Couture served in the military, and if he hasn't been on this show, you got to have him on. Randy is incredible.
I haven't had him on.
He's such a smart guy too. But he went on to become the six-time heavyweight UFC champion of the world. And he didn't even start fighting till he was like, 33. He wrestled. Oh God. Yeah, he wrestled. He wrestled growing up. Didn't have a college scholarship. Went in the military because his girlfriend got pregnant. And he was like, I need to take care of this kid. I need a good job, and he did that. And then started wrestling again in the military, and came out and went to Oklahoma State, wrestled there, 6-time heavyweight champion of the world. And he has this regret he can't let go of well, I never made the Olympic team. That was my dream. That was my dream, you know? And it's like, but you're the greatest. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but Tony Gonzalez, best tight end to ever do it, probably. First ballot Hall of Famer. A year after he retired, he went to on vacation with his wife to Spain because she could tell he was kind of struggling with stuff, and he just broke down over there. And she was like, "What's wrong?" And he's like, "I'll never be great again, and I've peaked, and like I don't know, I don't think I'm going to be a good enough man for you, and I don't know." Just like those kind of things, when it's like even the people at the highest peak feel that way. You know, you can only imagine how the rest feel on the athlete side. And as we know in the veteran community, like we struggle, like the suicide rates are high,
Yeah.
disconnection, the isolation, it's a problem, you know, and we got to pick our buddies up and keep checking on them. So that's really what MVP, that's who we're supporting. You know, we do that some through fitness, but some just, it's really just through community connection, staying in contact. And we've got chapters all over the country, and we're continuing to build and grow. And for anybody that's listening, if you're at the Army Navy game, we're going to have a really cool tailgate with the Medal of Honor Society and a few other nonprofits. And yeah, anyway, we're always just looking for more community engagements like that, bringing people together on the athlete side and the veteran side.
I've seen some pictures of you training. It looks like in or around a cage. Are you having a quiet MMA career on the rise here, or are you just like training?
No, I would get destroyed. And the minute
those are hard men and women, man.
I mean, so speaking of Randy, just grappling with him for 2 seconds, right? And this at this time,
thank you. No gracias.
At this time he was in his 50s already, right? And I was in my 30s, and just feeling how strong and controlling those people are when they, like, he was giving about 10% effort, you know, and anytime I was just slightly off balance, I could feel him just letting me know I can do whatever I want. And I was like, wow, this is so different. I mean, those guys are tacticians, but also extremely strong and tough and skilled. And so no interest in that. I think what you may have seen, so we made an MVP movie during COVID. I'm working more on the film and TV side now. I directed my first film about the genesis of MVP and the starting, how we started that organization, really. And it's about a Marine who was living in a homeless shelter and a former NFL player, first year out of the league, and they meet and they're going through the same struggles of you know, losing that uniform and trying to find
purpose and identity
and moving forward. And we shot it in the middle of LA during the pandemic. It's September, October of 2020.
Oh boy.
But we did it for like very little money, and everybody was like down, you know, just doing favors. And people like Tony Gonzalez, Randy Couture, Tom Arnold has a great cameo in it. Jay Glazer, who I co-founded MVP with. And so many of these other Strahan and Michael Strahan and Howie Long are in it. Like guys playing themselves, then all these veterans playing themselves. And we meet in the gym that we meet in, Unbreakable Performance Center, has a cage because they train fighters there. So maybe that's some of the stuff you saw.
I was like, hell yeah, he's going to be a sleeper. He's coming into the UFC early 2026.
No. But if you, so that film, it's on Prime and Apple TV right now, but we were on Paramount Plus for a couple of years as well. And now Netflix is licensing it starting here in December.
That's awesome. What do you want to leave people with as we drift off into Thanksgiving?
Oh man. Well, if you like food, go to 8primal.com and buy some meat.
Well, it's going to be a little bit too late to get it for Thanksgiving. So maybe next year, people. Or Christmas is right around the corner.
That's true. Christmas is around the corner. Yeah, here's a good, my fingers are in a lot of pies. That's very Thanksgiving friendly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, working on some of that. I've got, working on a D-Day 80th anniversary doc right now. We went out and started shooting in June of 2024 for the 80th anniversary. So that should be out.
We were there. I jumped in on the 80th.
Oh, you jumped in? I might jump next year. That's so cool. Let's connect on that because
it's not the 80th though. I mean, I'm sorry. My experience will be better than yours.
Yeah, it 100% will be.
Nobody comes to the 82nd anniversary. That's
you're probably on camera from us. We filmed so many people jumping that you're in there somewhere. You'll be like, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so working on that, and 8 Primal, it's a meat company co-founded. So it's, you know, veteran owned, but all of our beef, pork, and chickens from Texas, small family farms, and, you know, just trying to like there's a lot out there unethically done in very many sectors.
Yeah.
But when it comes to what we're eating, like that's important. And so, it's all, no hormones, antibiotics, grass-fed, grain finished. And I think the big thing for me was just the Texas connection and those small, the family farms. Like I think supporting the American farmers, super important, and ranchers
Totally
as
agree.
well. So working on that stuff and MVP and I guess if to leave any message, with us for Thanksgiving, as you roll into this week and the rest of the holidays, is just you try to be kind to each other, listen to one another, have your opinion, hold your values. I'm always for that. Like you should stand firm in that. But to your point earlier, like be able to articulate why you feel the way you feel and what you'd like to see change, how that, how that change is possible. And if you don't know the answer to that, that's okay. You don't have to have that right now, but I think be seeking that. And if you don't have that answer, then maybe it's not something to engage in as much, until you really know and feel strongly about like, what is the fix? What's the answer? Because there's plenty of people that can identify the problem. But what we're lacking are solutions that make sense and that are possible. And like, what are you doing about it as an individual? Like, what am I doing? What are you doing, Andy? What is anybody doing? If we feel a certain way, what are we doing to tackle that issue? And to actually, without ostracizing people, without further dividing, like how are we huddling together as a team, as a nation, as a society to get better, and it comes from listening, and learning and educating, as you had mentioned, but giving people that grace and having that humility and understanding that like I don't actually know all the answers. These are things that I feel and believe because of my experience, and my experience is mine and mine alone.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to learn more about Nate or support his organization, you can go to vetsandplayers.org. That's vetsandplayers.org, and the link should be down in the show notes. Thank you again for listening to Change Agents, an Ironclad original presented by Firecracker Farm. See you all next week with an all-new episode and an all-new guest. See you then.